What does it mean to be free? What does it truly mean to be free? Now, when I ask that question, if you begin to think about things such as social or civilizational, societal, maybe government type things, right? If you start thinking about, oh, well, when I'm free, it's because my government does this, or when I'm free, it's because my society. If your mind goes there, when I ask the question, what does it mean to be free? That is asking or answering the question from the second cause. Because truly, what it means to be free begins with the first cause. And the first cause is the consciousness of being free. Now, the Bible, this ancient text passed down to us by our ancestors, written by these ancient mystics, is known and referred to as the truth that sets us free. And that is because the Bible is all about the first cause. The Bible is all about revealing to those who have eyes to see and the ears to hear the mystic wisdom, the mystic interpretation of the wisdom. The Bible is all about revealing the first cause to help us understand that freedom begins within our own awareness of being. Freedom is a state of consciousness. And to truly be free, it starts with having a mind that is free, an awareness that is free, a consciousness that is free. And then all of these second, third, fifth, 50th causes come out from the first cause, which is being free inside of our own minds. They say, once you really learn and comprehend what the Bible is here to teach us, or what the mystic teachings are here to reveal to us, once we truly comprehend that, there are no prison bars that can contain us. There is no condition that can enslave us, because we understand that prison bars or conditions are all later causes after the first cause. And so in order to be in a position where we would feel constrained or restricted in our freedom, that would manifest out first from our state of feeling that we are constricted or restrained in our freedom. And solving that problem is just as simple as creating the problem. Solving the problem is simply a matter of moving in our awareness from being the person who is constrained to being the one who is free in our awareness, in our state of being. And that is exactly what these ancient mystic teachings teach us how to do, how to set our own minds free, how to set ourselves free in awareness, understanding that if in our state of being we are free, then the whole vast world is a reflection of our state of being. And thus, the conditions that we find ourselves in society, in governmental structures, in civilization itself, will reflect back to us the state that we hold ourselves in consciousness, because it is our consciousness that is the first cause. And everything that we observe on the outside are much later down the line of causation, but the root of everything that we observe on the outside is found within that first cause. Here at Sunday Mystery School, we are currently going through the work of Neville Goddard, in particular his 1948 Mystery School Masterclass. And we are at the portion of this Masterclass where he held a Q&A session with his students. Now, this Q&A session has been an absolute goldmine for these ideas that are very consciousness expanding and also very practical, very easy to apply to our everyday lives. And we've been in the question and answer session for a number of episodes now, and we're continuing. We're kind of picking up near the end. And before we move forward in the content, I'm going to start by looking back a little bit just so we can reconnect to our stream of thought from our previous sessions. And then we'll continue to move forward. The most recent question that we answered in the last episode, episode 29, a student had asked Neville, I find it difficult to change my concept of self. I find it difficult to change my concept of self. Why is that? Okay, so concept of self is, of course, the first cause. Okay, so what I accept and believe and consent to as being true about myself and others constitutes my state of being. Okay, and my state of being is that first cause. So what I accept and consent to as being true creates my world. Okay, so to change the world, we start by changing our concept of ourself. We start by changing our state. Okay, so, if we want to see what state we're in right now, we open our eyes and we look at the world. Okay, and if we don't like what we see, the cause of what it is that we're seeing can be found within. Now, this is at once extremely liberating because now we don't have to go out and convince anyone else to change the world for us. Okay, so extremely liberating. And it's also a tremendous responsibility because now, if there's something in our world that we don't prefer to see, now there's really only one being who is the cause. And that is, of course, ourselves, and in particular, our state of being, our state of consciousness. Okay, so it's both those things. It's profoundly liberating because now we know exactly what the problem is and what to do to change it. And it's a pretty intense responsibility because now we are the only ones responsible. Okay, so this is why they call it the pearl of great price. When you truly determine for your life that you are going to take this level of profound responsibility for everything, that is purchasing the pearl of great price, meaning that you sell all of your beliefs in second, third, and 50th causes to purchase the belief in the first cause. Okay, so what if you open your eyes and you look around the world and you see something, you're like, yeah, I really kind of prefer it was a different way. And then you attend Sunday mystery school and you learn that really you're responsible for both the way things are, and you have the opportunity and responsibility to shift and become a different state of being so that you can see a different world. And then you find that difficult to do. Okay, so that's where we find the student asking this question of Neville. Neville, I open my eyes and I look around my world and I see things that I would prefer to be a different way. And so I know, based on sitting in this lesson, these lessons with you, I know I'm the only one responsible for this. And I know I need to change myself, my concept of myself. But I find it difficult. Why is it so hard to change my concept of myself? Why is that? And this is what Neville says. He says, because your desire to change has not been aroused. If you would fall in love with what you really want to be, if you would fall in love with what you really want to be, you would become it. It does require an intense hunger to bring about a transformation of self. Okay, so you can't be lukewarm, right? You have to be hot or cold. You cannot be lukewarm, right? You have to be very, very much in that state of a profound, intense hunger. You really have to want it because we're talking about changing how we see ourselves. So a lukewarm person who's kind of indifferent. Oh, I could be this, I could be that, and I don't really care about either. That's not going to change anything, okay? The individual who sees a possibility for themselves, I could be this, and connecting to this dream of what I could be, and then beginning to fall in love with that possibility where it becomes consuming, a consuming desire, where throughout our days and our nights, we become, consumed like a fire burning with passion for this possibility of what we could be. That is the type of passion, of hunger, of desire that truly transforms a self-concept. Okay, so if you really fell in love with what you wanted to be, you would become it. There's something about falling in love with an idea. What we fall in love with, we become closer to. We're naturally drawn and attracted towards. It's magnetic. We start to become more of what we love. Okay, so that there's this energy activation that becomes a communication between the state desired. And if we feel like we're in a gap from where we are towards the state desired, our love and our appreciation and this magnetic pull that comes from our love of this state begins to draw us into the state. Okay. And Neville gives the example of a verse from Psalms. As the deer panteth after the water, so my soul panteth after thee, O Lord. If you would become as thirsty for perfection as the little deer is for water, that it braves the anger of the tiger in the forest, you would become perfect. Okay, so really, if you feel like it's hard to change your concept of yourself, if you feel like you don't have a dream that has really ignited your passion, there's a chance that you aren't dreaming big enough to actually ignite the fire that would consume everything that is not and make you one with what you desire to be. So this really becomes an invitation to introspect. Okay? If I'm finding it difficult to change my concept of myself, it may be because I have not yet found my true desire. Okay, maybe I'm still living in a series of conditional desires. Okay, so desires that are conditional based upon my culture or my society or the civilization or the time-space reality that we all seem to be living in right now. Maybe I'm hungering after things that my soul doesn't necessarily want, but my culture or social media tells me that everybody else seems to want. So I'm like, oh, well, everybody else seems to think this is great. I guess that means I should want it too. Well, what everybody else thinks is great is never going to be enough to light the fire of all-consuming burning passion. Okay, what everybody else thinks is exciting or enticing is not necessarily going to be what your heart pants after, like a deer pants after water, and is so thirsty that it will do anything to find that fresh spring water that is soul satiating. Okay, so that's really the place that each one of us, when we reach this level of wisdom in our path and journey, seeks to be one with that state of all-consuming passion and desire, falling in love with the person that we desire to be. Now it can, as I said, this is an invitation to introspect. So it can take some time, take an investment, some time going within to really enter a state of gnosis, to really begin to know yourself in a way that no one else can tell you who you are. You have to do that introspection and arrive at that place where you are self-defined. You actually are learning to know yourself. And so it's like, well, it is myself. Why would I need to learn to know it? Well, here's the thing. We have our conscious mind, okay? And our conscious mind is very much aware of being in this time-space reality, living in a physical human body and having relationships with the world, okay? So there's a deeper aspect of our being that is currently sub and unconscious, okay? So this idea of gnosis is this idea of using the conscious mind to comprehend deeper truths that are held and known by the sub and unconscious minds and are raised to a level of lucidity through a process of introspection. Okay, so does your soul know what that all-consuming state would be, that one thing that you would fall in love with, of course your soul knows that. But if your conscious mind is not yet aware, then there's this period and process of introspection where your conscious mind goes into the deep, into the silence, into the unknown, to make known what is currently not known to the conscious mind. And this is a way of getting all of your minds aligned and coherent on the same page. Okay, so when your unconscious desires, your subconscious desires are brought to the level of conscious, so that now you can say, I consciously desire what my sub and unconscious aspects of my being desire. That is what is going to create that very powerful magnetic attraction where you begin to fall in love with your ideal. Okay? Neville says this is the secret. If you're finding it difficult to change your concept of yourself, it's because whatever state you think that you want to change to isn't actually aligned in that way with your entire being. Okay, so really cultivating an intense hunger, that is what is going to bring about the transformation of self. You have to fall in love with it. Okay, let's move forward to question number 29. I am contemplating a business venture. This business venture means a great deal to me, but I cannot imagine how it can come into being. I have this business venture in mind. It means a lot to me, meaning my interest and passion is aroused by the idea. Okay, so I think I'm on the right track based on the last question of like, oh, concept of self, my interest is aroused, right? I'm substantially hungry for this, but I cannot imagine how it can come into being. Okay. The answer to this question is actually encoded in the question, okay? Because when we understand the nature of the first cause, we also understand that graduating into a level of awareness where we know that we are the first cause equals retiring from the level of the how. Because the how is the second through infinite causes, okay? We are only responsible for the first cause. We are responsible for the state of being, okay? So our responsibility is to enter the state of being the successful business venture, okay? So I cannot imagine how. It's not your job to imagine how. It's your job to imagine what you want, which is the end, okay? Neville says you are relieved from that responsibility, right? You're retired. You are relieved from that responsibility. You do not have to make it a reality. It already is a reality. Although your concept of yourself seems so far removed from the venture that you are now contemplating, meaning you see yourself as one thing and you see this business venture as something else. Like there appears to be a gap there, okay? But the mere fact that you are aware of it means that it is existing now as a reality within you. This is true for anything. It goes beyond business ventures. Okay, this is literally anything that you can imagine. The mere fact that you are able to imagine it, that you are capable of creating an image in your awareness of that thing, business venture, relationship, place, object, event, whatever it is, if you can create an image of it, that means that it exists now as a reality within your awareness, within your consciousness. So really the only thing to do is to ask yourself, how would I feel? And what would I be doing if my business venture were a great success? How would I feel and what would I be doing if my business venture were a great success? Create that as a character. Create that state of feeling and doing as a character, just as though an author were writing a novel and here comes a character into the story who is a successful business owner and is feeling and doing the things associated with that state of being. Okay, so as the author, you're creating that as a character, and then become identified. Now become that character. Become identified with that character and feel the way that character feels. Okay, so become identified. So make that character your identity. And you will be amazed how quickly you will realize your dream. Okay, so this is a really powerful concept, and we're going to dig into it. Okay, so there is a version of each of us that is the way that we desire to be. Okay, so let me say this a little differently. So, there is a version of me. I'll use myself as an example. Okay, there's a version of me that is a chef and owns a very successful restaurant. Okay, there's a version of me that is a commercial airline pilot, right, and flies airlines around the world. There's a version of me that is a politician, right, and serves in some great nation on this planet, right? There's a version of me that is a C-suite executive at a Fortune 500 company. Okay, so I'm using these as personal examples, but this is true for each of you. I'm just using myself as an example. So let's say that I am currently a student of metaphysics, and I'm doing whatever I'm doing, and all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I think I would rather be one of these other things. Okay. What I could do in a contemplative state of being, right? So I could sit down and just kind of chill out, get super relaxed, and do some daydreaming. Okay. And in that daydreaming, what I would do is I would think of myself as I currently know myself. And then I would find the version of myself who is already one of those things. Okay, so I would imagine what my life would be like were I already one of those other things, okay, that I'm not currently, but I'm contemplating as a possibility. Okay, so I would create that as a character. So this is the version of Josiah who is a chef, master chef at a restaurant. Okay, this is the version of Josiah who is a noted politician. This is the version of Josiah who is a C-suite executive. Okay, so it's like creating these characters. So it's still my general personality. Okay, I still have, my character traits and my personality quirks. Okay, I'm still me, but in a character from writing as an author, creating a character development sense. I'm still me, but there's a couple of key things that are different. Okay, so one is what I'm doing and how I'm feeling. Those are things that are different. So if I'm a chef running a restaurant, what I get up and do every day and how I feel, right? The state that I find myself in on a day-to-day basis as I'm going through the actions, acting out, being this character, being a chef at a restaurant, okay, is different than what I do and how I feel when I am anything other than that character. Okay, so we're really doing these as examples. This can go for anything, but the basic idea here is for you to create the version of yourself that is already in a character form, still you, but in the state of being what you desire to be. Okay, so still you, but running a 7-figure e-commerce business. Okay, what would that feel like? Okay, and what would you be doing if that was your present identity? Okay, so you create it in this state of contemplation, just like daydreaming, right? Just kind of playing with the idea. But as you begin to really flesh it out, meaning you're really beginning to clothe what starts as just a daydream, as you really start to clothe it with the tones of reality, meaning like maybe you start to see in your mind's eye, what the relationships are with your coworkers or with your team or with your suppliers or with your customers. right? You start to kind of get a feeling of like how you would operate in those scenarios. And so like that starts to add some tones of reality. And then you start to, think about like, what would it feel like at the end of the day? When you're reviewing what happened that day, chances are the body of activity, how you actually spent those minutes is a little different than how you've been spending your minutes. So it'd be worth kind of fleshing that out, adding tones of reality. Like, what would this really be like? And when you've created this avatar in your mind's eye of you, but in a different state, okay? Once you've really created that, you can make the choice to become, to move your consciousness into and begin to live from that avatar, from that character that you have created. So it's still you. So it's not like you're becoming an entirely different person, but you're entering a new state, okay? Neville says, become identified with the character, meaning all those traits, what you're doing, what your relationships are, kind of how you see the world when you're in that state. Become identified with that and feel the way that character feels. So this is making it real, feeling it real, making it real, okay? Then you become amazed at how quickly you will realize your dream. And Neville says, the only sacrifice that you are called upon to make is that of your present concept of self. So the only thing I have to give up to become what I desire to be is what I currently am. Now, for some people, that right there, that's a no-go. Some people find themselves too attached to what they are to sacrifice it on the altar of what they would be. Okay, so it's not necessarily a small sacrifice because you are giving up what you currently are. Both the positive, negative, and indifferent traits of what you currently are all have to be sacrificed. So it's not that there's no sacrifice required. You're technically sacrificing everything, sort of. Everything about your state of being. Okay, so this is, you're dying to the person that you have been to resurrect the person that you're choosing to be. Okay, so you create this other character, and now you're going to, in a sense, kill off. It's kind of aggressive language to use, but really you're going to completely cease being this. You're going to move into this new character that you've created for yourself. Now, some aspects of your identity, your personality, your quirks, your character traits are going to move with you. Okay, but that old way of being that wasn't what you desire to be, that is what is going to die. Okay? So you have to give up your present concept of yourself and appropriate, meaning make real in your awareness, the desire you want to express. Okay? Now, I spoke about this in a previous episode, but I'm going to bring it forward here because I feel like it's relevant. So I was sitting with a teacher who teaches state of being, but really from a psychic type perspective, metaphysical, psychic arts type of teacher. And this teacher was originally trained as an engineer and is now teaching psychic arts. And so this teacher was explaining like, hey, if I currently, even with all of my, academic, all of my credentials, academic degrees or whatever that say that I'm an engineer, if I tried to go get an engineering job right now, while still in the character of being a psychic arts teacher, okay? Even if I had all of the credentials that would qualify me for that job, guess who would not be getting that job, okay? I wouldn't be getting that job. Even if I was fully qualified for it, they would find some reason to reject my application because that's not the character that I actually am. I am actually in the state. I'm playing the character of being a psychic arts teacher. And a psychic arts teacher may be trained as an engineer, but does not work as an engineer because they're two distinct states, okay? And so this teacher went on to say, however, that does not mean that I could never go back and get another job as being an engineer. What that means is that in order to be hired as an engineer, I would have to reset my state. I would have to recreate that character of me as an engineer and then move my awareness into it. And in particular, the psychic teacher was talking about how really this becomes a programming of your crown chakra. So the crown chakra, what you place in your crown is how the world sees you. Okay. So, if crown chakra says psychic arts teacher and degrees say engineer, and this person goes and tries to get an engineer, job, it's going to say no. Okay. But if psychic arts teacher reprograms state of being into the character of engineer and changes the programming of the crown chakra to say engineer and is holding the degrees and goes to get the job, guess who's getting that job, right? Because everything aligns. And so the world sees this individual as being an engineer. Okay. So this is an idea of really making practical and present this wisdom of, if you've ever applied for a job and then wondered why you didn't get it, right? So maybe, part of you was conflicted. Part of you was living and being something else. Part of you thought you wanted that, but you didn't take the time to create a new character and move in your imagination into it. And then as that character, go and apply for the job. Okay. So it's like the state from which you do anything is supremely important. Okay. Who do I believe that I am as I'm taking the action that I'm taking in the world? Remember, first cause, right? So the action that I'm taking in the world might be third, fourth, fifth, 20th cause, okay? Or it might be relating to those causes. But who I believe I am is the first cause, okay? So naturally it follows that whatever happens in my world is going to flow out of the first cause, more so than out of any other cause, okay? So this is Neville making this profoundly clear. Okay, continuing with the next question here. As a metaphysical student, I have been taught to believe that race beliefs, meaning beliefs of the human race, and universal assumptions affect me. Neville, are you telling me that only to the degree that I give these universal beliefs power over me am I influenced by them? What an awesome question. I've been studying metaphysics. I've been taught to believe that, yes, I have, control over my own state of being, but really there are also universal assumptions on the outside that do affect me because they're so widely held. But Neville, you're telling me that really it's only the amount of power that I give to these beliefs that gives them any power over me. How much power I give to these beliefs over me is exactly how much power they'll have over me. Is that really what you mean, Neville? That's what this student is asking. And of course, Neville says, yeah, of course. It is only your individual viewpoint that matters. Your world is forever bearing witness to your present concept of self. If someone offends you, change your concept of self. That is the only way that other people will change. Remember, one of the key premises of first cause teaching is that other people come and show you by their behavior towards you the state that you are in. Okay, so the world bears witness. The world shows you what state that you are in. And if you don't like it, if you feel offended by the behavior of another, by whatever's happening in the world, change your concept of self. The problem's never out there. Okay, the problem is always with the first cause. Okay. Tonight's paper, Neville says, may be read by 6 people in this room, and there won't be 2 of them that will interpret the same story the same way. One will be super happy about it. The other will get depressed. Another won't care either way, and so on. Yet it is materially the same story. Universal assumptions, beliefs of the human race, call them what you will, they are not important to you. What is important is your concept, not of anybody else, but of yourself. That is what is important, your concept of yourself. For the concept you hold of yourself determines the concept you hold of others. Leave others alone. What are they to you? Simply follow your own desires. The law is always in operation. It is always absolute, meaning it's not conditional. The law does not just work sometimes, or first cause is not just the first cause some of the time. It's not, my first cause is not my first cause 80% of the time, and then 20% of the time, it's the world being the first cause for me. It's not how it works. The law is absolute. First cause, 100% of the time. Always starts with me. Your consciousness is the rock upon which all structures rest. Watch vigilantly, with care, what you are aware of. You need not concern yourself with others because you are sustained by the absoluteness of this law. No man comes to you of his own accord, whether he be good, bad, or indifferent. No one else will ever choose you. You will always choose them. You are the chooser because you are the first cause. He was drawn to you because of what you are. So the people in your world that come into your world and come into your awareness, they're drawn to you because of what you are. You're a match, right? You're a match on some level. Your concept matches a world in which they are a part of your world. Okay? So if you change your concept of yourself, you'll find different people will be called forth into your world because it's always matching your state of being. I was reading a thread the other day on X about someone who was kind of asking in a general way for feedback. They were like, "Hey, so I recently my values changed, and I decided to basically get really focused on building my best life. And I noticed that pretty much overnight, all of my old friends vanished. Has anyone else noticed this?" And the comments were unanimous. Everybody's like, "Yeah, when you change what you're focused on, you change what your values are, and you change what's important to you. The people who were in resonance with the old you that didn't used to think that way, that used to value the old things and used to think the old way, those people, they'll vanish. No longer a match. You no longer have things in common. So of course they'll disappear." And then of course the whole idea is you start to surround yourself just very naturally because of the first cause. You start to surround yourself with people who are more like-minded, who are also valuing similar things. And so this is a very natural process. And of course, we're speaking of it from this metaphysical point of view, but anyone, whether trained in a mystery school or not, can recognize that the nature of our relationships is very much shaped by what we value and who we believe that we are. And as that shifts, so do those relationships. And some of them leave and are replaced by new relationships with new people who value similar things. Neville says, you cannot destroy the state that someone else represents through force. Rather, leave them alone. What are they to you? Simply rise to another level of consciousness, and you will find a new world awaiting you. And as you sanctify yourself, others are sanctified. Next question. Neville, who wrote the Bible? Who was it that wrote the Bible? Here's Neville's answer. The Bible is written by intelligent men who used solar and phallic myths to reveal psychological truths. But commonly today, many of us have mistaken their allegory for history and therefore have failed to see their true message. So we've talked about this in the early episodes, and it's worth revisiting. So our ancestors, these mystics who came to know through personal revelation the true nature of reality and out of love, because really when you start to awaken in this way, you really begin to awaken into a state of love. So out of love, they saw us as their progeny, or really those who would follow, or perhaps even them, but in a different time space, right? They were thinking of the other aspects of their being, and they said to themselves, out of love and appreciation for those who will come after me, whether that be another incarnation of myself or my progeny or my, whatever. I love them. And so I want to set them up for success. So I've had this revelation of what the true nature of the universe is. And I know that it is the truth that sets everyone free. And so thinking of my children, my offspring, for the next thousands of years, I really want them to know the truth that sets them free. So how can I capture and record and pass down this truth so that thousands of years from when I'm putting pen to paper and writing this, they will have access always. It'll persist. They'll always have access to the truth that sets them free, no matter how deep in the dream they go, no matter how far into the void of forgetting they find themselves. Maybe these words will give them access. They'll be able to manifest, the Bible, right? Manifest some of these teachings. And by reading the living word of God that I'm taking the time to record, it'll awaken the truth that sets them free, and they'll be able to change their concept of themselves. So this is a profoundly beautiful, loving place that these people were thinking of, you and I. And so they thought to themselves, well, how can I record this truth in a way that will last even as the eras and epochs of humankind shift, like the shifting sands of time? Okay, so today I could write a Bible that used, the internet and computers and technology as metaphors or allegories. Okay, and let's say several thousand years from now, someone finds that book and is reading it, and they don't have computers or the internet or modern, as what we call modern technology at all. It would make zero sense to them, right? They'd be like, I don't know what they're talking about. This makes zero sense. Okay. And I think we actually have examples of that in some of the archaeology that we've done here on Earth. We find people talking about things that we don't understand because we're completely out of context. Well, here's the thing. These mystics were enlightened in a way where they were able to foresee that this could be a problem. So what they did is they chose allegories based on what is fundamental to the human experience. Okay, so we're on Earth. We're always going to have some sort of relationship with our star, the sun, and with the observable universe around us. And if we're a human born of woman, we're going to have some sort of relationship to this idea of phallic myths or procreation. Okay, we'll have some sort of context. Okay, so naturally they chose to write their allegories for this profound wisdom within the context of solar and phallic frames, so that no matter what the era of man was to come in the future, which eventually becomes the past, right? It's this giant circle and spiral. So that these words would truly become eternal and timeless, okay? These truths, this wisdom. And so this was profoundly revealing of their state, that they were thinking in this way. They were thinking from outside of time. They were thinking as higher dimensional beings. And then they were encoding their wisdom in a way where it would persist. And we're still talking about it thousands of years later. Okay, so this is extremely revelatory of where these words came from. Neville continues. He says, "It is strange, but when the Bible was launched upon the world and acceptance of it seemed to be in sight, the great library of Alexandria burned to the ground, leaving no record as to how the Bible came into being." Few people can read other languages, so they cannot compare their beliefs with the beliefs of others. And of course, our churches do not encourage us to compare our beliefs with those of others. How many millions of people who accept the Bible as fact ever actually question it? Believing it is the word of God, they blindly accept the words and thus surrender and lose the essence contained in the words. They have accepted the vehicle without necessarily understanding what the vehicle conveys. So the next question naturally follows this question. Do you use the Apocrypha? Okay, so the Apocrypha is a collection of mystic texts that predate the canonization of what we currently refer to as the Bible. Okay, so without going into too much detail and history on this, there was a period of time where there was a very vast collection of mystic writings. And contained within this vast collection of mystic writings were texts that have now become accepted as the Bible, meaning the actual books of the Bible that are published as the Bible, the Holy Bible. And the process of distilling from this vast collection of mystic texts to a smaller collection that represents the Holy Bible was undertaken and done, completed by a small group of people who convened, these wise men. I'm almost certain it was all men at that specific era. This was, very long time ago. They came together and they said, out of all these mystic texts, here's the ones that we feel make the most sense. And so out of that, they compiled, this will be what we use as our sacred text for the religion of Christianity going forward. Okay. So this student is asking, Neville, obviously you teach the Bible, or you're obviously aware that the Bible is just a selection from a much vaster collection of mystic texts. Do you use that wider collection of mystic texts in any way? And Neville says, I do not use them in my teaching. I have several volumes of these additional mystic texts at home, but they are no greater in their significance than the 66 books that we currently have in our present Bible. They're simply telling the same truth, but in a slightly different way. For instance, there is a story told of Jesus as a young boy watching children make birds out of mud. Holding the birds in their hands, they began to pretend the birds are flying. Jesus walks towards them and knocks the birds out of their hands. The children begin to cry. He picks up one of the broken birds, remolds it. Holding it high, he breathes upon it, and the bird takes flight. Now, that story did not make it into the 66 books of our present Bible, but it is included in this mystic writings about the state of Jesus Christ, which is the state of the fully awakened man who realizes, fully awakened human being who realizes the power of the first cause and becomes one with it. Okay? Neville says this story is of one who came to break the idols in the minds of men. Now, what are the idols? The idols are causes other than the first cause. Okay? So when I believe that a government has more power over my life than I have over my life, I am now worshiping an idol in the shape of whatever I envision my government to be. When I believe that my boss or the company that I work for has more power over my life than my first cause consciousness has over my life, the success of my financial well-being, right? My happiness, my health, my well-being, whatever it is. If I believe that someone on the outside, if I believe in the opinion of a doctor, okay, because they hold a piece of paper from some sort of prestigious organization, I believe that they now, as a 15th cause, have more power over my health and well-being than I have as the first cause. I have now created an idol and am worshiping an idol. Okay. So here is a story of these children creating birds of mud and pretending that they are flying. Okay. So these are idols. And so Jesus breaks the idols and then shows them how to use the same substance of belief and remold it into a beautiful form and give it life. How do we do that? Through the power of the first cause, through the power of our awareness. Consciousness creates reality. That is what this story is trying to convey. I come not to bring peace, but a sword. I come not to bring peace, but a sword. Okay, to slice away the illusions of the second cause Okay, there's nothing peaceful about that. That's very violent cutting away of the world of illusion to reclaim the power of the first cause. Truth slays all the little mud hens of the mind, slays the illusions, and remolds them into a new pattern that sets us free through the power of the first cause. Question. If Jesus was indeed a fictional character created by biblical writers for the purpose of illustrating certain psychological dramas, how do you account for the fact that he and his philosophy are mentioned in the non-religious and non-Christian history of those times? Were not Pontius Pilate and Herod real flesh and blood Roman officials in those days? Neville says the story of Jesus is the identical story as that of the Hindu savior Krishna. They are the same psychological characters. Both were supposed to have been born of virgin mothers. The rulers of the time sought to destroy both of them when they were children. Now, that sentence right there is really fascinating. Let's just speak about that for a quick second here. The rulers of the time sought to destroy them when they were children. Okay, so the rulers of the time are threatened by the power of the first cause. Okay, so that right there makes sense. So when a population is beginning to awake to the power of the first cause, it makes sense. The rulers who require in us giving them our power, right? So basically us surrendering our sovereignty as children of the Most High and giving it to a man. Okay, so those idols depend for their very existence upon our willingness to do that. Okay, so naturally, those idols will seek to destroy the power of the first cause while it is young. Okay, so even that is a powerful communication of wisdom encoded in the story of Herod seeking to kill Jesus while he was young. Okay, so it's like there's literally these layers of meaning on all of these stories. Both of these individuals healed the sick, resurrected the dead, taught the gospel of love, and died a martyr's death for mankind. Hindus and Christians alike believe their savior is God made man. Today, people quote Socrates, yet the only proof that Socrates ever existed is found in the works of Plato. It is said that Socrates drank hemlock, but I ask you, who is Socrates? I once quoted a line from Shakespeare, and a lady said to me, "It was Hamlet that said that." No, Hamlet never said it. Shakespeare wrote the lines and put the words in the mouth of a character he created and named Hamlet. Hamlet didn't say anything, okay? Hamlet is a character created by Shakespeare and speaks Shakespeare's words, okay? St. Augustine once said, "That which is now called the Christian religion existed among the ancients. They began to call Christianity the true religion, but it never existed." It never actually existed. Okay. We're going to keep going here. Question 34. Do you use affirmations and denials? Do you use affirmations and denials? Here's Neville's answer. And this is definitely a controversial answer because there are many people in the manifesting community who are very much excited about affirmations. I've seen less people use denials because currently in our era of understanding consciousness and manifestation, our current belief is that our consciousness can't really determine the difference between a positive and a negative statement. So the fact that I'm denying something means that I am, to my consciousness, confirming its existence. So I think today we would not use denials, but today many people use affirmations. And here's what Neville says about it. Neville says, let us leave behind the schools of thought that use affirmations and denials. I think that's a very revelatory thing to say. He's not necessarily poo-pooing it, but he is saying, let's leave it behind. So maybe it served a purpose, but now it's time to graduate from those schools. Possibly. Okay. This is what he says. The best affirmation, the only effective affirmation, is an assumption, which in itself implies the denial of the former state. And the best denial is total indifference. Things wither and die through indifference. Things are kept alive when you give them attention. You do not deny a thing by saying it does not exist. Rather, you put feeling into it by recognizing it. And what you recognize as true is true to you, be it good, bad, or indifferent. Your mere recognition of something as being true makes it true for you. Maybe not for anyone else, but for you it is true because you are holding it as true. It's affecting your perspective on the world. Therefore, it is true for you. Even if there's no evidence for it for anyone else, what you put your attention upon becomes true for you. So guard your attention. Use your attention as a life-giving spirit would use their attention, because you are a life-giving spirit. So what you place your attention upon, you give life. Is it possible for one to appear dead and still not be dead? What an interesting question to ask Neville in a Q&A session. I have no idea where this comes from, but this is what he says, and it's still interesting. He says, General Lee, that's Robert E. Lee, the Civil War general, was supposed to have been born 2 years after his mother, who was believed to be dead, was buried alive. Lucky for her, she was not embalmed or buried in the earth. She was placed in a vault where someone heard her cry and released her. 2 years later, Mrs. Lee bore a son who became General Lee. That is part of this country's history. Okay, Mr. Goddard, we will take your word for it. I do not have any type of fact checking available for that story, but it's fascinating. So there you go. Question 36. How could one who was deprived in his youth become a success in life? So let's say we grew up not really having very much at all. And so we think that we are, as Neville would say, behind the 8 ball, meaning trapped or limited in our possibility because of our origin. This is Neville's answer. He says, we are creatures of habit. We form patterns of the mind which repeat themselves over and over again. Habit acts like a compelling law, which drives one to repeat the patterns. But it is not a law, because you and I can change the patterns. Many successful people, such as Henry Ford, Rockefeller, Carnegie, were deprived in their youth. They grew up in poverty. Many of the great names in this country came from poor families, yet they left behind them great accomplishments in the political, artistic, and financial world. One evening, I love this story. This is probably one of my favorite stories that Neville tells. One evening, a friend of mine attended a meeting for young advertising executives. The speaker of the evening said to these young men, I have but one thing to say to you tonight, and that is to make yourself big, and you cannot fail. Taking an ordinary fishbowl, he filled it with 2 bags, one of English walnuts and the other of small beans. Mixing them with his hand, he began to shake the bowl and said, this bowl is life. You cannot stop its shaking, as life is a constant pulsing, a living rhythm. But watch. And as they watched, the big walnuts came to the top of the bowl as the little beans fell to the bottom. Looking into the bowl, the man asked, which one of you is complaining, asking why? Then added, isn't it strange? The sound is coming from the bowl and not the outside. A bean is complaining that if he had had the same environment as the walnut, he too would do big things, but he never had the chance. Then he took a little bean from the bottom of the bowl and placed it up on top, saying, I can move the bean through sheer force, but I cannot stop the bowl of life from shaking. And as he shook the bowl, the little bean once again slid to the bottom. Putting his ear to the bowl, he heard another voice of complaint, and he asked, What's that I hear? You are saying that I should take one of those big fellows who thinks he is so big and put him on the bottom and see what happens to him? You believe he will be just as limited as you, because he will be robbed of the opportunity of big things, just as you are robbed. Let's see. Then the speaker took one of the big walnuts and pushed him right down to the bottom of the bowl, saying, I still can't stop the bowl from shaking. And then, as the speaker shook the bowl, the men watched the big walnut come to the top once again. Then the speaker added, Gentlemen, if you really want to be successful in life, make yourself big. My friend took this message to heart and began to assume he was a successful businessman. Today, he is truly a big man if you judge success by dollars. He now employs over 1,000 people in the city of New York. Each one of you can do what he did. Assume you are what you want to be. Walk in that assumption. Walk identified as that character. And it will harden into fact. What I love about this story is that in a very artful way, it condenses into a parable the teachings of the last 30 episodes of Sunday Mystery School. We have gone into profound depth and breadth into this idea of the first cause. And really, it all boils down to this idea. Make yourself into the person you desire to be. Carve and mold yourself in the image and likeness of your true desire. Walk in that assumption, and the world will reshape itself to reflect back to you in evidence. And that truth will harden into fact. And that concludes the question and answer transcript from Neville's Mystery School Masterclass, the 1948 lessons. We're going to be hosting our own question and answer session over the next couple of episodes of Sunday Mystery School. And if you have a question that you would like to have explored in a way similar to how this Q&A session has been explored with Neville, I invite you to submit your question. There's a link in the video description on the live stream on YouTube to a Google form where you can submit your question. There's room for 3. You can submit as many forms as you want. Already received many submissions. We'll be going through and compiling them, and then we will begin to do our own question and answer sessions starting next week. So I invite you to submit those questions using that form. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to the Zoom room. Give me a moment here to adjust my settings. There we go. Orlena, we can hear you now. Go ahead. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so I have a question. So I wrote it down. Okay, so when you attract someone, are you attracting all of their traits or one or two traits about them? You know?
This is a fascinating question. When you, okay, so no man comes unto me unless the Father in me draws them. That's the concept here. Mhm.
Exactly.
And so am I just attracting some, like, are they just showing up the way that will reflect to me, like just part of their traits, or am I attracting all of their traits? So what's interesting about this, I mean, in theory, it may be a different answer, but speaking from experience,
Okay.
I will say that I have noticed situations in which someone, okay, so let's say there's two people outside of me and they have an interaction,
Right.
and one of them, let's say, you know, person number two treats person number one in a not great way. Okay.
Yes.
And so person number one is like, I don't like person number two. They're a terrible person. Okay.
Mhm.
And then I walk into the scene and I have an interaction with person number two. And based on my state of being, I find them to be a perfectly lovely person. I have zero problem with them whatsoever.
That happens
Right?
to me all the time.
There you go. So I think that's the answer. I think we literally, like, people will mirror back to us the energy that we're giving off.
Okay. Okay. So we're attracting who we are. So who we are, basically. And so, okay. I think I got it.
Okay.
I think I got it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I know that can be a lot, right? Because they're like, well, what about these people that do things that I really don't like? And it's like, well, Neville says, change your concept of yourself. There's some part of you that is accepting that behavior from others. And
Okay.
we can also say, like, there's some part of me that thinks that it's okay to treat myself that way.
Okay.
That's the part.
Everything is a teaching lesson, like, ultimately.
Always.
Okay.
It's just a constant. So it's like, if you've ever used a telescope or binoculars, like what you look at, you have to like refocus to like get it back into perfect clarity. I feel like life is that way. It's like every time we look at something a little bit different, we have to kind of like, we have the opportunity to refocus to see more clearly what we want to see, right? And so it's this constant state, you know, we're constantly molding and carving and polishing, really, the facets of our state. And I think that's what life is all about. And I think that when we embrace that from a place of joy, it becomes a joyful exploration.
Right. Thank you so much.
Of course. Anyone else in the Zoom room who would like to contribute to the conversation? Mr. Mike, nice to see you. How are you?
I'm excellent. It's very nice to see you as well, Josiah. I got a question regarding action. Neville doesn't talk per se a lot about action, and in this question and answering period, you talk that consciousness is first cause, and everything further to that is second cause or fifth. And so we live in a 3D world. Where can you expand on the concept of action and how that fits in to Neville's teachings?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So perfect setup there. So first cause is our consciousness. So to try to do something on the outside, to take action when our first cause is not aligned with what we want the outcome to be, that's literally, you're not going to have any success with that scenario. You're literally, Neville's term for this is a futile rearrangement of surfaces. Okay. Or like, you know, trying to shave the mirror when really it's the face that has the beard. Okay. So the teaching here is the first cause is to become the person who is and has what you desire to be. And then action should all come naturally flowing from that place of being that person. So in this question and answer session today, the person asked Neville, I'm contemplating this business venture. I want to be successful in it. I'm inspired by this idea, but I don't know how. Okay. And so Neville says, you don't need to know how. It's already a reality within you. You just need to know how you would be feeling and what you would be doing. Okay. So this is a reference to action. But the whole idea is that the first thing you do is you move into the state. So your action does not come from a place of trying to make it so. Your action assumes that it is so. And now you're doing things that are in alignment with that assumption. Okay. So if your business were a massive success, what would you be doing? Okay. So rather than trying to make it a massive success, which is assuming from the level of the first cause that it's not, okay, you assume that it is a massive success, and then you operate and take action from the place of what would I do now that it is a massive success? What am I doing? Okay, so it's aligning to that part of your being where it's already a reality and then acting within that reality.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that, Mike. I see Roxy, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Roxy.
To piggyback off Mike, so in my exact situation, which I'm here doing exactly, is my goal is that I'm a successful fashion designer.
Yes.
I'm actually right in the moment cutting pieces and making a product.
Yes.
But in my idea of a successful fashion empire, I'm not making anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the doer and the maker of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So while I'm at this stage and being the doer and the maker, sometimes I fall out of love with the dream because this is not the part that I want to play in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I, but circumstance says, this is what you have to do right now. So how do you, what's your suggestion for playing that out?
So I'm going to offer two reflections here, Roxy. So the first is, it's not circumstance that suggests it. It's state of being that suggests it. Okay. So to be very bold and direct here, there is a part of you that believes that this is the circumstance. Okay. So that doesn't necessarily make it true objectively. Okay. But subjectively right now it is true. Okay. So that's the first thing to pay attention to. To transcend that, you would have to move into a state where you see different set of circumstances. Okay. So it'd be a different state of being. Okay. So that's the first answer. The second answer, which really is very minuscule compared to that first answer, is that if you feel you absolutely must be doing it now, you still need to make the state change, because nothing's going to change unless you change your state. But you would move into a state where you are now doing it yourself so that you can teach the people who will be doing it for you. So as you go through that process of design, your whole thought process would be like, the only reason I'm doing this is because I need to be able to teach the people who will be being able to do it for me, right? So it becomes this, I'm designing this in a way. So if it's going to be mass produced, you need to understand what that looks like and the type of instructions that you'll be giving to the companies that will be mass producing your fashion. Okay. And you need to be creating a template from that perspective. Okay.
Yes, that makes, so it's kind of like not getting rid of the dream, but kind of breaking it down in a step by, a phase by phase.
Yes.
Kind of situation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Josiah.
Roxy, I want to ask you one question there. So just hypothetical, right? So if someone, if let's say a buyer saw one of your pieces and was able to track you down, and you got a phone call tomorrow and was like, hey, Roxy, I love what you're doing here. I want to get into the factories right away. If that happened, would you still be making the clothing yourself?
No.
Right? It would be a whole different paradigm.
Right, because I've heard people, I've thought about this in the sense, and sometimes people says, well, what is the true thing that you want? And most people probably want just money. And I would say, if I were given $1 million today, I would still have the dream of creating clothes. I would just be making more clothes
okay.
with the money. Yeah. So yeah.
So Roxy, yeah. I want to do some coaching here. So what is that end scene? Okay. So is it your, like, for example, are you in New York City and you see someone walking down the street wearing your clothing? Is it someone on a runway and you're in the front row watching them, rocking your outfit? Like, what is that end desire? What is that scene that implies that your dream is true?
Well, the scene I've been using is because of an upcoming event that I have. I'm going to be shown at a fashion show at Art Basel next month. So I've been using that scene as a more immediate.
Intermediate, okay.
And intermediate, and seeing the audience standing and clapping as all the models walk out and I walk out on the stage.
Okay, so you're wearing your own fashion in that case, yes?
No, I have, yeah, they're models.
There's model. Okay, because you said you walk. Okay, you, as a fashion designer, you're
so
walking
you know
out
the
and being
closing,
received.
what we consider the closing of the show. So you walk
All the
out
closing.
with
Okay.
the
Okay. All right. So what is the end? So Roxy, you are at the end of your career. What is the memory that you look back on when you're telling your, let's just say, hypothetical grandchildren about what you did with your life? What's the scene that's the peak moment that you look back on and be like, I'm so grateful that I was able to experience this?
that there will be boutiques possibly around the country, around the world, that carry all my creations. This is not just clothing that I have a desire for. And these boutiques are known as like a haven for other creatives. It's not just a boutique, it's the creative little bubble that people find things from all over the world, from other creatives. And my family lineage has now reignited our passion for creativity, because it's kind of been quelched due to finances and limited thinking, and not expanded in consciousness. And I have the opportunity to do that now. So that's what I've added to the dream of recent, is this reawakening to new possibilities and old dreams being reignited.
So last week I told the story of working in my yard and damaging a piece of equipment, and seeing the damage with the evidence of my eyes and being like, I'm not gonna accept that. I know the power of the first cause. So that night, as I was falling asleep, in my mind's eye, my imagination, I pulled in front of me that piece of equipment and I saw it in its perfect original condition. And I ran my hand back and forth over it to confirm over and over again until I knew for a fact that it was in its original undamaged condition. And at some point the next day, I remembered this and I went outside and I checked and it was perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So my imagination rewrote my consciousness of that object and it came out that way. So the reason I call you back to that story is, Roxy, what is a scene that is that concise? What could you, in your mind's eye, what could you touch over and over and over again, that the only way you would be able to touch it that way is if it was perfect? Okay, just like I was running my hand over this piece of equipment, the only way that it would feel the way that it felt is if it was perfect. And that's how I knew that it was perfect. Get that sensory and that condensed on it. What would you be touching that you could only be touching if this dream were a realized fact?
I have to get some thought. Oh, I know what it is. It could be a piece of fabric that I have designed from scratch, that has been embellished by different artisans from different parts of the world, and it's total incorporation of all these different ideas. And I am now seeing it and touching it with all the textures and
That's it. So determine where you would be standing, like where on planet Earth you would be standing. Okay, so for me, it was in my backyard, right? Because that's where this thing was. Determine where you would be. You don't have to determine any of the how, right? Just know where you are to give it more tones of reality. And then just touch that fabric that could only exist where your dream a realized fact. And just touch it and take joy in touching that fabric as you're falling asleep, so that your subconscious mind knows that this is profoundly important to you. You're going to carry it into the deep of your being. And just do that until you no longer feel the desire to do it. When you have satiated that desire, then it's a fact and you can just trust the bridge of incidents.
No, it already felt so, I've already envisioned it. It felt so satisfied already that I'm in the middle of a factory, what we consider a factory, a production house.
Yes.
And I'm touching the fabric, and the artisan or employee that works there, also, we're both just smiling at each other, like, because they enjoy, they feel the joy of it just equal as I do. They're going to be the one using it to make the thing, and they're just excited to be able to work with that thing. And I'm excited that we created that thing, and we're both in this space of satisfaction of what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
beautiful.
Great. Oh, thank you. Thank you so
Of course,
much.
Roxy. Yes. Awesome. Thank you for that. Anyone else in the Zoom room? Okay.
Yes, hang on.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got another one if that's all right.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that has difficulty or challenges getting a clear mental picture? Is there a way to bypass the mental picture to get to the feeling of the wish fulfilled?
Yeah. So, yeah, there is. So for me, I can see pretty clearly. I understand some people aren't able to really do that necessarily. So there's other ways. Chances are, in my understanding, most humans, there is a sense. So it may not be seeing. For some people, it could be hearing or touching. There's a sense usually that you feel a little bit more aligned with. So I would suggest maybe connecting to, what would a voice that you know really well, such as the voice of your wife or your child, like what would they say, and you would hear them say that they would only say, were your desire now a realized fact? And then just listen clearly in the silence for that voice while you're in the portal state of the brainwaves.
And if it's a clear knowing, how would you develop that? Like what scene would that entail?
The goal being to arrive at the clear knowing. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Or that is the skill set that feeling of knowing.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Is your sensory gift in a sense.
The feeling of knowing. Yeah. Okay. So what I do to shift my feeling of knowing is I go through a process of deconstructing what I think reality is. Okay. So, I'm like anybody else, I live a whole day, and, I see all of the evidence of the 500th and 1,000th causes, right? Because that's, most of us are living in, all the causes piled on top of each other. And so if I'm at the point where I'm going to shift a calm and deep sense of knowing, I will take a little bit of time and deconstruct what I feel that reality is, basically walking it back to first principles, which is basically going into that silence that Neville describes as like that, just I am, without any stories, just I am. And then slowly conditioning that awareness with that new sense of calm knowing. Because when you get back to that level of I am awareness, there's nothing that isn't possible. Like literally, when you've unconditioned all of the conditions, you're now back at just that root spring source of all possibilities. So by doing that, it's much easier to now choose what you will now know on a deep level as being true. Does that resonate?
That resonates. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you for that, Michael. Okay. If you are a mastermind member of the channel, so for those of you that have joined the channel at the mastermind level, there is a link to the Zoom room in the community tab. Your invitation is to join the Zoom room now, because we're going to be doing a mastermind at the end here of Sunday Mystery School. So go ahead and hop in the Zoom room. We're going to go ahead and wrap up Sunday Mystery School for today. So starting next week, we're going to be diving into the Q&A from our Sunday Mystery School community. So get those comments, questions submitted in the Google form. The link is in the video description on YouTube. Looking forward to our Neville and Chill podcast live streaming on YouTube at 8 p.m. on Tuesday. I'll have special guest Tamer with us to talk about consciousness technology, the ways that our modern technology is advancing to interface with our consciousness. And rumor has it, we may even be doing a live demo of some of his consciousness technology. So definitely check that out. That's Tuesday, live stream right here on YouTube, 8 p.m. Very much looking forward to that. And then we will see you back here next Sunday, same time, same place, for our Sunday Mystery School, the beginning of our Sunday Mystery School Q&A session. Thank you, everybody, for joining me live. Thank you for everybody who has joined the channel and members in the Zoom room. And until next time, my friends, imagine wisely, and we'll see you all again soon.